The wind howled through the jagged cliffs as dusk settled over the ancient wilderness, painting the sky in shades of crimson and ash. The land was unforgiving, sharp rocks, twisted trees, and a silence that felt alive with hidden danger. In this harsh world, survival was not a skill, it was a battle fought every moment. A lone early human moved cautiously along a narrow path carved by time and erosion. His body was lean, marked with scars that told stories of past encounters, some victories, many close calls. His name was Aruk, a hunter and survivor, shaped by the wild. In his hand, he gripped a sharpened spear, its tip darkened by fire to make it stronger. Every step he took was deliberate, every breath measured. He had been tracking a small herd of deer for hours, his stomach aching with hunger. Food had become scarce in recent days, and the tribe he belonged to depended on him. The memory of hungry faces, children, elders, pushed him forward. He could not return empty-handed again. But something was wrong. The forest had gone quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, no distant animal calls. Aruk froze. His instincts screamed louder than any sound. This silence was not peace, it was a warning. Slowly, he crouched behind a large stone, scanning the shadows. His eyes, trained by years of survival, searched for movement. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Then, a low growl echoed through the valley. It was unlike anything he had ever heard. Not the growl of a lion, nor the snarl of a wolf. This sound was deeper, layered, as if more than one voice spoke at once. Aruk's grip tightened on his spear. From the darkness between the trees, it emerged. A monstrous creature stepped into the fading light. Its body was massive, larger than any predator Aruk had seen. But what froze his blood was its heads, 3 of them, each with glowing eyes that burned like embers in the night. Their mouths dripped with saliva, and their teeth gleamed like sharpened stones. The beast moved with terrifying power, its paws silent despite its size. Each head turned independently, scanning, sniffing, hunting. Aruk had no name for it. But deep within, he understood one thing, it was death. The creature let out another growl, louder this time, shaking the ground beneath Aruk's feet. One of its heads snapped toward his hiding place. It had found him. There was no time to think. Aruk ran. He burst from behind the rock, sprinting down the uneven path, his feet barely finding balance on the jagged terrain. Behind him, the creature roared, 3 voices merging into one horrifying sound, and charged. The chase had begun. Aruk's heart pounded as he leapt over fallen branches and dodged sharp stones. He knew he couldn't outrun it forever. The creature was faster, stronger, and driven by a hunger that knew no mercy. He needed a plan. Ahead, the path split, one leading deeper into the forest, the other toward the cliffs. Aruk chose the cliffs. It was a risk, but the terrain there was dangerous, even for large beasts. If he could use the environment to his advantage, he might have a chance. The ground grew steeper as he climbed, his muscles burning with effort. The wind howled louder here, carrying the scent of stone and emptiness. He dared a glance back. The creature was gaining. Its 3 heads snapped and snarled, its massive body moving with terrifying speed despite the rough ground. One head lunged forward, jaws snapping just inches from Aruk's back. He stumbled, nearly falling, but caught himself. No mistakes. One mistake meant death. Reaching the edge of a narrow ledge, Aruk stopped. Before him was a deep chasm, its bottom hidden in darkness. There was no escape forward. He turned to face the creature. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The wind, the growls, the pounding of his heart, everything faded except the monster before him. Aruk raised his spear. The creature approached slowly now, its 3 heads circling, studying him. It was intelligent. It knew its prey was cornered. One head lunged. Aruk reacted instantly, thrusting his spear forward. The tip struck the creature's shoulder, piercing its thick hide just enough to draw blood. The beast roared in fury. Another head snapped at him, forcing Aruk to roll aside. He grabbed a stone from the ground and hurled it at the creature's eyes. It struck one head, causing it to recoil briefly. But it wasn't enough. The creature advanced again, more aggressive now. Aruk's mind raced. He couldn't defeat it with strength. He needed to outsmart it. His eyes flicked to the narrow ledge behind the creature, a section of rock that looked unstable, cracked by time and weather. An idea formed. It was dangerous, desperate, but it was his only chance. Aruk stepped forward, shouting at the creature, waving his arms to draw its attention. The beast responded with a furious roar, all 3 heads focusing on him. He moved sideways, slowly, carefully, guiding the creature toward the unstable ground. Step by step, the creature followed, its massive weight pressing down on the fragile rock. Closer, closer. Then, the ground cracked. A sharp, thunderous sound echoed as the ledge began to give way beneath the creature's weight. One of its heads snapped at Aruk, but it was too late. With a deafening roar, the ground collapsed. The creature lost its footing, its massive body slipping into the chasm. Its claws scraped against the rock, trying to hold on, but the stone crumbled beneath them. For a moment, one of its heads locked eyes with Aruk. Then it vanished into the darkness. The roar faded into silence. Aruk stood there, breathing heavily, his body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. The wind continued to howl, but now it carried a different feeling, not fear, but survival. He had done it, not by strength, but by instinct, by intelligence, by the will to live. Slowly, Aruk stepped back from the edge, his legs weak but steady enough to carry him away. He looked at his broken spear, then at his bloodied hands. He had faced something beyond understanding, something that should have ended him. And yet, he survived. As night fell completely, Aruk began his journey back to his tribe. The hunt for food had failed, but he carried something far more valuable: experience, knowledge, and a story that would be told for generations. A story of the day a man stood against a three-headed beast, and lived. In the world he lived in, survival was never guaranteed. But as long as there was breath, there was hope. And as long as there was hope, there was a way to fight back against even the darkest monsters of the unknown. The night stretched endlessly across the sky, thick with darkness and scattered with faint stars that barely pierced the cold. Aruk moved slowly through the rugged terrain, each step heavy, his body aching from the encounter. The wind no longer felt like an enemy, it whispered through the rocks as if telling a story, a warning, or perhaps a reminder that he was still alive. But something inside him had changed. He was no longer just a hunter searching for food. He had seen something impossible. Something that did not belong to the natural world he understood. And deep in his chest, a quiet fear lingered, not of death, but of what else might be out there. Aruk descended from the cliffs carefully, using his hands to steady himself against the sharp stones. The path down was treacherous, but his mind was elsewhere. The image of the creature, its three heads, its burning eyes, refused to fade. Creatures like wolves hunted in packs. Lions ruled through strength. But that thing, it was different. It hunted like it knew. It watched like it understood. By the time he reached the forest floor, the air had shifted. The silence was no longer absolute. Crickets chirped faintly, and the leaves rustled gently in the breeze. Life was returning, yet Aruk did not feel safe. He picked up a fallen branch and sharpened its end quickly against a jagged rock, crafting a crude second spear. His original one was damaged, its tip chipped from the earlier strike. It might still work, but he could not risk relying on it alone. He needed to be ready. Always. The journey back to his tribe would take hours, maybe longer in the darkness. Normally, he would have waited for dawn, finding a safe place to rest. But tonight, rest felt like a luxury he could not afford. Because what if that creature wasn't alone? The thought sent a chill down his spine. Aruk moved through the forest with heightened awareness. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound sharper. He avoided open areas, sticking close to rocks and trees where he could hide if needed. Then, a sound, soft, subtle, a twig snapping somewhere behind him. Aruk froze instantly. His breathing slowed, his body becoming still like stone. His ears strained to catch the slightest movement. There it was again, not loud, but deliberate. Something was following him. Slowly, Aruk turned his head, his eyes scanning the darkness. He crouched low, gripping both spears tightly. His heart began to pound again, but this time he controlled it, forcing himself into silence. Minutes passed. Nothing moved. Nothing revealed itself. Was it his imagination? No. His instincts had kept him alive this long. They did not lie. Aruk made a decision. Instead of running, he turned, and walked back toward the direction of the sound. Carefully, quietly. If something was hunting him, he would face it on his terms. Step by step, he moved through the trees until he reached a small clearing. Moonlight filtered through the branches above, casting faint silver light across the ground. And then he saw it. Tracks, large, deep, pressed into the soil. Not one set, three. Aruk's chest tightened. The footprints were similar to the creature from before, but smaller. Still massive compared to any animal he knew, but not as enormous as the one he had faced. His mind raced. Was it a group? A family? The realization hit him like a udar. If that creature had others like it, then the danger was far greater than he had imagined. A low growl echoed from the edge of the clearing. Aruk spun around, raising his spear. From the shadows, a shape moved. Then another, and another. 3 figures emerged slowly, their forms stepping into the faint moonlight. They were smaller than the beast from the cliffs, but still terrifying. Each one had 3 heads. Each one moved with the same unnatural coordination. But these were younger, less experienced, and yet, still deadly. Aruk's grip tightened. He understood immediately. These were not just predators. They were learning, hunting together, testing their strength, and he had just become their target. One of the creatures stepped forward, its heads tilting as if studying him. Another circled to the side. The third stayed back, watching. They were surrounding him. Aruk's mind worked fast. Fighting one had nearly killed him. 3. Impossible. Unless. He remembered the cliffs, the unstable ground, the way the larger beast had fallen. These creatures were strong, but they relied on their power, their weight, their aggression, and that could be used against them. Aruk slowly backed toward the trees, keeping his eyes on the creatures. He needed space. He needed movement. The first creature lunged. Aruk dodged to the side, thrusting his spear forward. The tip grazed one of its heads, causing it to snap back. With a hiss, the other 2 heads immediately attacked, forcing Aruk to retreat further. The second creature charged from the side. Aruk grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into its eyes. It recoiled just enough for him to slip past, sprinting toward a narrow section of the forest where the trees grew close together. That was his chance. The creatures followed, their growls echoing through the night. Aruk ran between the tightly packed trees, weaving left and right. The space was narrow, perfect for him. But not for them. The first creature tried to follow but slammed into a tree, its large body struggling to maneuver. The second pushed through, breaking branches but slowing down. The third found a gap, moving faster than the others. It was gaining. Aruk's lungs burned, his legs screaming for rest. But he pushed forward, spotting what he needed ahead, a fallen tree, its trunk suspended above the ground, creating a narrow passage beneath it. He dove under it. The creature followed, and got stuck. Its large body couldn't pass through easily. It snarled, its head snapping wildly as it tried to force its way forward. Aruk didn't hesitate. He turned and drove his spear downward, striking one of its necks. The creature roared in pain, thrashing violently. The other 2 were catching up. No time. Aruk pulled back and ran again. He emerged from the dense trees into a rocky slope leading downward. Without slowing, he slid down, using his hands to control his descent. Behind him, the creatures struggled to follow. One slipped, another crashed into a rock. The third made it down, but slower now. Aruk reached the bottom and didn't stop. He ran, far, until the sounds behind him faded. Until the forest changed. Until the air felt different. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, Aruk slowed to a stop. His body collapsed against a large stone, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. He was alive, again, but this time, it felt different. This was no longer just survival. This was something bigger, something growing. He looked back toward the dark forest in the distance. Those creatures were still there, learning, hunting, waiting, and one day, they might come closer, to his tribe, to his people. Aruk closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with a new determination. He could not ignore this. He could not pretend it didn't exist. If his people were to survive, they needed to know. They needed to prepare. As the sun rose, casting golden light across the land, Aruk stood once more. His body was tired, his weapons worn, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He turned toward home, because the next battle would not be fought alone. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Aruk finally reached the outer edges of his tribe's territory. The land here felt different, familiar, yet fragile. Tall grasses swayed gently in the morning breeze, and the distant sound of flowing water echoed through the valley. This was home, a place of warmth, of fire, of people who trusted him to return. But today, Aruk did not return as just a hunter. He returned as a warning. His steps slowed as he approached the settlement, simple shelters made of branches, animal hides stretched tightly over curved frames, arranged in a loose circle around a central fire pit. Smoke curled upward into the sky, a sign of life, of safety. Children were the first to see him. They ran toward him with excitement, their small feet kicking up dust, their laughter breaking the quiet morning. But as they got closer, their smiles faded. They saw the blood on his arms, the torn skin, the exhaustion in his eyes. Something was wrong. The elders emerged next, their faces lined with age and wisdom. Behind them, the hunters, strong, alert, always ready. Among them was Karo, the tribe's leader, a man whose strength was matched only by his ability to think. Karo stepped forward, his gaze sharp. Aruk stopped a few steps away, trying to catch his breath. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Aruk raised his hand, and pointed toward the distant forest. Danger. The tribe understood. They gathered quickly around the central fire as Aruk began to explain, not with complex words, but with gestures, sounds, and markings in the dirt. He drew the shape of the creature. Then 3 heads, then more shapes, smaller ones. Murmurs spread through the group. Fear, confusion. Some shook their heads, unwilling to believe. Creatures like that did not exist. The world was already dangerous, why imagine something worse? But others listened carefully, because Aruk was not a man who feared shadows. If he said something was out there, it was real. Karo crouched beside him, studying the drawings. His expression did not change, but his eyes darkened slightly. He understood the seriousness of this. 3-headed beasts, more than one, hunting together. This was not normal. This was a threat to all of them. Karo stood and turned to the tribe. He spoke firmly, his voice carrying authority. The meaning was clear, preparations must begin. Immediately, the hunters moved without hesitation. Spears were sharpened, stones were gathered. The stronger members of the tribe began reinforcing the shelters, adding thicker branches, stacking rocks to form crude barriers. Fire pits were expanded. More fire meant more light, more protection. The elders guided the children and the weaker members closer to the center, where they would be safest. Everyone had a role. Everyone understood the stakes. Aruk sat near the fire, his body finally beginning to rest. A woman approached, Lyra, a healer. She knelt beside him and began cleaning his wounds with water and crushed leaves. It stung, but Aruk didn't react. His mind was still on the forest. They followed, he said quietly, using simple words and gestures. Lyra paused, her eyes meeting his. Followed. That meant the danger was closer than anyone wanted to believe. As the day passed, the tribe transformed. What had once been a simple camp now looked like a defensive stronghold. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Aruk watched it all, and yet, something felt wrong. Defending would not be enough. Those creatures were not like normal predators. They were curious, intelligent, persistent. If they had already started hunting near the tribe, they would return. That night, the tribe stayed awake. Fires burned bright, casting flickering shadows across the ground. The hunters stood at the edges, watching the darkness beyond. Every sound made them tense. Every movement caught their attention. But nothing came, not that night, or the next. Days passed, and slowly, tension began to fade. Some started to believe the danger had passed. That maybe Aruk had encountered something rare, something that would not return. But Aruk knew better. And on the 4th night, it happened. A scream shattered the silence. Sharp, terrified, from the outer edge of the camp, the tribe erupted into motion. Hunters grabbed their weapons. Fires were fed with more wood, flames rising higher. Aruk was already running. He reached the edge of the camp just as chaos unfolded. One of the creatures had entered. Not the massive one from the cliffs, but one of the smaller ones. Its 3 heads snapped wildly, its eyes glowing in the firelight. It had grabbed a young hunter, dragging him across the ground as he struggled to break free. The tribe attacked. Spears flew through the air, striking its body. Stones hit its heads. The creature roared, releasing the hunter and turning on its attackers. Aruk didn't hesitate. He charged forward. This time, he was not alone. Karo joined him, along with 3 other hunters. They moved together, surrounding the creature just as it had once tried to surround Aruk. Now the roles were reversed. The creature lunged at one of them, but another struck from the side. It turned again, confused, its 3 heads trying to track multiple threats at once. That was its weakness. Too many minds, too many directions. Aruk saw his moment. He ran straight toward it, drawing its attention. All 3 heads locked onto him, jaws opening wide. At the last second, he dropped low. Karo leapt from the side, driving his spear deep into the creature's chest. Another hunter followed, striking its leg. A third hit one of its heads with a heavy stone. The creature staggered, roared, fought back with terrifying force. One hunter was thrown aside, crashing into the ground. Another barely dodged a snapping jaw. But they held their ground. Together, Aruk rose and grabbed a burning branch from the fire. Flames. The creature recoiled instantly, its heads pulled back, snarling. Fire. It feared it. Aruk stepped forward, waving the burning branch, forcing it backward. The other hunters followed his lead, grabbing fire and advancing. The creature retreated, step by step, until it reached the edge of the camp. For a moment, it hesitated. Its glowing eyes locked onto Aruk. Then it turned, and fled into the darkness. The forest swallowed it, silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. This time, it was filled with something else. Understanding. The tribe gathered, breathing heavily, their bodies tense but alive. They had faced the creature. And survived, not through fear, not through luck, but through unity. Aruk looked around at his people, the hunters, the elders, the children now peeking from behind shelters. This was their strength, not one man, not one weapon, but many, standing together. Karo stepped forward, placing a hand on Aruk's shoulder. No words were needed, the message was clear, this was only the beginning. The creatures were real, they were dangerous, and they would return, but now, the tribe was ready. They had seen the enemy. They had learned its fear. Fire, strategy, togetherness. As the flames burned brighter that night, Aruk sat among his people, no longer just a hunter, but a protector. And deep in the forest, beyond the reach of firelight, unseen eyes watched. Waiting, learning, the next encounter would not be the same. Because now, both sides understood each other. The fire burned higher than ever before, its glow stretching far into the darkness like a warning to anything lurking beyond the trees. The tribe had changed. Fear had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something sharper, something focused. They were no longer unaware prey in a dangerous world. They were watchful now, ready. But deep in the forest, something else had changed too. Aruk could feel it. Days passed after the attack, but the tension never truly faded. The tribe worked harder than ever. Hunters no longer went out alone. Groups moved together, always carrying fire, always watching the shadows. Even the children were taught to stay close, to recognize danger, to run at the first sign of anything unusual. And every night, the fires burned. Brighter, stronger, unbroken. Aruk stood at the edge of the camp one evening, staring into the forest. The sky was dimming, painted in fading orange and deepening blue. The wind carried a scent he now recognized. Not just animals, not just earth, them. He turned as footsteps approached. Karo joined him, his expression serious. Without words, the two men shared an understanding. It was coming again, not one, not two, something bigger. That night, the tribe prepared differently. Instead of waiting within the safety of their camp, Karo made a bold decision. The hunters would not allow the creatures to strike first. They would meet them before they reached the heart of the tribe. A line was formed at the edge of the forest. 10 hunters, each armed with spears, stones, and most importantly, fire. Torches flickered in their hands, casting long shadows across the ground. The flames danced wildly, as if they too could sense what was approaching. Aruk stood at the center of the line. His grip was steady, his eyes unblinking. This time, he would not run. The forest was silent, too silent. Then, a low growl rolled through the trees, followed by another, and another. The ground seemed to vibrate faintly, as if something heavy was moving just out of sight. The hunters tightened their formation, torches raised, spears ready, and then they appeared. Not one, not three, five. 5 creatures stepped out of the darkness, their forms emerging slowly, their glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. They were larger than the ones before, stronger, more confident. And behind them, a shadow moved, bigger, heavier, familiar. Aruk's breath caught. The massive beast from the cliffs. It had survived. The fall had not killed it. It stood behind the others, its 3 heads rising above them, its presence commanding, terrifying. This was no random group. This was a pack, and that was their leader. The air grew heavy with tension. The creatures did not charge immediately. They observed, waited, learning, just as the tribe had. The leader let out a deep, echoing roar. The sound shook the ground, sending a chill through every member of the tribe. Then, the attack began. 2 of the smaller creatures lunged forward, moving fast, their heads snapping wildly. The hunters reacted instantly, throwing spears and stepping forward with fire. One creature recoiled as flames came too close, but the other pushed through, slamming into one of the hunters and knocking him to the ground. Chaos erupted. The line broke into smaller fights. Aruk faced one of the creatures head-on. It lunged, and he sidestepped, driving his spear into its side. It howled, one head turning to bite at him while another snapped at his arm. He rolled away just in time. Nearby, Karo and two others worked together, using fire to keep a creature at bay while striking whenever it hesitated. But the leader, the massive beast, had not moved yet. It watched, its glowing eyes locked onto Aruk. Then, slowly, it stepped forward. Each movement was heavy, deliberate, powerful. The ground seemed to respond to its weight. Aruk felt it before it even reached him. This was different. This was not like the others. This was the one he had faced before. And it remembered him. The beast roared, all three heads focusing on him at once. Then it charged. Aruk braced himself. The impact was nearly overwhelming. He dodged to the side, but one of its heads clipped his shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to stand. No fear, not now, not again. The creature turned quickly, faster than something its size should be. Its jaws snapped toward him again. Aruk grabbed a torch from the ground and thrust it forward. The flames licked at its faces. This time, it did not retreat. It hesitated for only a moment, then pushed through. It had learned. Fire alone was no longer enough. Aruk's mind raced. They were adapting. Every encounter, every fight, they were becoming stronger, smarter. He looked around. The tribe was holding, but barely. If this continued, they would lose. There had to be another way. Then he saw it. Behind the creatures, deeper in the forest, the ground sloped downward toward a narrow ravine, a deep cut in the earth, partially hidden by shadows and brush. Just like the cliffs, an idea formed. Dangerous, but necessary. Aruk shouted, drawing the leader's attention fully. He waved his arms, striking the ground, making himself the target. It worked. The massive beast focused only on him. Aruk turned, and ran, not away from the battle, but toward the ravine. The creature followed instantly, its heavy steps shaking the ground as it chased him. The other creatures hesitated, distracted by the remaining hunters. Aruk sprinted through the trees, his body screaming with exhaustion. Branches scratched his skin, rocks cut his feet, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the beast closed in. Closer, closer. He reached the edge of the ravine. Stopped, turned. The creature charged, all three heads lunging forward, jaws open wide. At the last moment, Aruk leapt aside. The beast's momentum carried it forward. The ground beneath it cracked, collapsed. With a thunderous roar, the massive creature fell into the ravine, its body crashing against the rocks below. The sound echoed through the forest, shaking the air itself. Silence followed. Aruk stood at the edge, breathing heavily, staring into the darkness below. This time, there was no movement, no sound. The leader was gone. He turned and ran back toward the tribe. The battle was still ongoing, but without their leader, the remaining creatures were disorganized. The hunters, seeing Aruk return, renewed their strength. Fire pushed the creatures back. Spears struck deeper. One by one, the creatures retreated, their growls fading as they disappeared into the forest. The fight was over. The tribe had survived, again, but at a cost. Several hunters were injured. One lay still, unmoving. The victory was not without pain. As the tribe gathered, tending to the wounded, Aruk stood silently. His chest rose and fell slowly, his eyes scanning the forest one last time. The danger was not completely gone. But something had changed. The creatures had lost their leader. Their strength, their unity. For now, the balance had shifted. Karo approached, placing a firm hand on Aruk's shoulder. Around them, the tribe stood stronger than before, not just survivors, but fighters. They had faced the unknown, adapted, fought back, and won. The fire burned brighter that night than ever before, not just as protection, but as a symbol of strength, of unity, of survival. And as the stars filled the sky above, Aruk looked out into the darkness, not with fear, but with readiness, because he knew one truth now more than ever. No matter how powerful the enemy, humans would learn, adapt, and survive.